Hello, and you are very welcome back to the Soccer Punter podcast. I am your host, John T8, and it is game week 5 of the Premier League. We have a full set of fixtures this week, running Saturday through Monday, and I am going to cover the 7 games taking place on Saturday in this podcast. And we're going to start off at Molineux as Wolves host Liverpool. We can see here that Wolves have started out 1 win, 3 losses from the opening 4 games. Not surprising in terms of the points accumulation in the first 4 games. I think everybody's expecting Wolves to be in that lower part of the table. But I think they have surprised many with the attacking output. Well over 1 expected goal every game. Over 2 expected goals against Manchester United and Brighton. Can consider themselves a little fortunate to walk away with all 3 points versus Everton, but probably also feel a little hard done by walking away with nothing at Old Trafford. You can see here again the shots and the shots on target output pretty high, particularly against United on the opening day. But again, despite losing some of their better players in the window, they continue to be a threat going forward. Foul numbers, double digits every step of the way. Expected, they will have to employ certain tactics in order to get something out of games. Offsides, at least 1 every game, multiple offsides in 3 out of the 4, something we might be able to take advantage of in a parlay. Corner numbers have been fairly steady. After that 15 on the opening day at Man United, you've got 8, 7 and 6. Throw-in numbers, high teens into the mid-20s, and multiple yellow cards every game. Liverpool, 3 wins from 4, 10 points from a possible 12 in the opening 4. Really good stuff from them. Didn't look great against Chelsea, I felt like, on the opening day. Professional performance against Bournemouth, unbelievable comeback against Newcastle, and really, really impressive against Villa last time out. Villa's performance level really surprised me there. Expected goals backs up pretty much everything that we're seeing. They've been fairly consistent on the expected goals versus their actual goals scored. The one time that they've looked close to conceding 2 expected goals was against Newcastle, and considering they played with 10 men for the majority of that game state does come into that. As we can see here, shots numbers fairly high every step of the way. Pretty poor output in terms of shots on target versus Chelsea. 12 offsides across 4 games, averaging 3 a game. Interesting. Corner numbers 8, 12, 14 and 10. Throw-in numbers kind of all over the place. 6 yellow cards and 2 reds. I believe Liverpool are one of 2 teams sitting with 2 red cards at this point in the season. So here's some notes on the game. I think Wolves can get over 7.5 shots. I think both teams will be carded, and I think Wolves will pick up more than the 1 card. Liverpool, on the other hand, plenty of shots from them expected. I would imagine their output at Wolves will be high. At least 1 offside, which has happened in every game. I think they'll get plenty of corners, which usually comes with shots on goal. And again, I think both teams will be carded. And that leads me to this. I struggled to find value in terms of a single to Mac, but I did come up with a same game parlay priced at around plus 320, advising half a unit on this. There is 8 legs here, but a fun one to cheer along on Saturday morning. Roy Hodgson takes his men to Villa Park for the first of the 10 a.m.s that we're covering. Aston Villa will be looking to bounce back from a very disappointing defeat at Liverpool last time out. They never really got going in that game. An early injury to Diego Carlos required a change in system. Perhaps that could be factored in, but yeah, poor against Liverpool, just as they were poor against Newcastle on the opening day. Their wins coming against Everton and Burnley, who you would expect to beat. This game is only the second home game for Villa this season, and it's at home where they have been particularly strong under Unai Emery since he was appointed. XG numbers pretty high, except against Liverpool. There's not really much in the XG which suggests that anything was deserved or undeserved. It all kind of correlates to one another. Here's the home record under Unai Emery. 8 games won in a row, starting with Palace last season. You can see there as well in that stretch. So that basically means they've won 9 in a row in the league. 8 in a row in the league. They've got those 7 there, plus the one that they already won this season. It's a large tally of about 21 goals scored and only 2 conceded. So impressive. And as you can see there as well, in terms of their home matches, they've actually scored 2 or more goals in their last 14 at Villa Park. Shots numbers fairly high, as has been the shots on target. 1 offside in each of their last 3. Corner numbers fairly steady, fairly high. 11, 13, 10 and 10. Yellow cards averaging 2 per game. The only game they didn't get a booking was against Burnley, where they were dominant. Crystal Palace, very good start under Roy Hodgson. Picking up 7 points from a possible 12. XG, not a lot in it to suggest that anything's been fair or unfair. What I would suggest here, though, is when they've come up against teams you expect to finish in the top half, they've dropped points against the relegation fodder. They've picked up wins, and that's actually been pretty typical of Roy Hodgson's time at Palace. Shot state has been very high. I thought with the departure of Wilfried Zaha and the absence of Michael Olise through injury, they'd struggle in that department. They have proved me wrong. Fair play to them. Foul numbers fairly consistent, 11 or more in all 4 games so far. Corner numbers 10, 9, 14 and 6. Throw-in numbers fairly high, mid-teens all the way up to the 30s. And only 3 yellow cards over the first 4 games means that they have one of the best disciplinary records in the division. So some notes here. Aston Villa. I think there's going to be more than one match goal here, given Unai Emery's strong home record. I think that could continue here, although the way Crystal Palace are playing, it wouldn't surprise me if they contributed to the scoreline as well. I think Villa will continue to have high output in terms of shots, and I do believe that can be said for Crystal Palace as well, which does lend itself to there being a good amount of match corners, and I do think that both teams will pick up bookings in this one. Just the single for me on this one. Aston Villa money line is priced at -110. I think that's a very good price, all things considered. I'm advising 1 unit on that. I could not come up with a same game parlay that made a lot of sense in terms of value, so this is just the one selection from this game. There are better opportunities elsewhere for same game parlays. Off the Craven Cottage now as Fulham host Premier League new boys Luton. And these are 2 teams that have not started well. Fulham obviously picking up more points than Luton, but Fulham's performances have raised a few eyebrows. So we can see here they picked up that win against Everton on the opening day, and judging by the XG there, they were very fortunate to do so. Gifted a point by Arsenal as well. So their 4 points, you could argue, have all come rather luckily for Marco Silva's men. It's the XG that really makes for the poorest reading here. They've lost the XG battle significantly in all 4 games. Fair enough against Arsenal and Man City. to concede nearly 4 expected goals against Brentford and to concede nearly 3 expected goals against Everton in particular. That is really a big red flag there. As you can see from the shots numbers, it's what you'd expect in correlation with the XG. 10 or less in all 4 games so far, not a lot on target. They've had at least one offside in every single game. Corner numbers pretty high, 14, 10, 11 and 9. Multiple bookings in every game so far and a couple of reds too. I believe it is Fulham and Liverpool are the only 2 teams to have picked up 2 red cards in the opening 4 rounds. Luton Town have found life in the Premier League difficult as expected. They have played 2 away games and 1 home game. The 2 away games against Brighton and Chelsea, I don't think many people are expecting them to pick up points in those types of fixtures. Ultimately against West Ham, very unlucky not to walk away with at least a share of the spoils there, and West Ham really did spoil their first night at Kenilworth Road last time out before the international break. Shots numbers were fairly low against Brighton and Chelsea, but they did manage quite a lot against West Ham, which was interesting. The shots on target doesn't make for a good reading there though. Corners, I mean, we've got 13 in the opening game, 10 and then 15. To be honest, I was expecting the number of corners and the number of throws to go up at Kenilworth Road just because it's such a narrow ground, and that's exactly what we saw against West Ham. At least 1 booking in each of their first 3 games, averaging out to 2 per game. And here's the notes I have. I do think that there'll be goals in this one. While I don't think they've got a great attacking statistics, I can't see either team keeping a clean sheet. So I'm going to go with over 1.5 match goals, and I kind of expect both teams to get on the score sheet here. I think there'll be plenty of corners in this one, and I think because this is a match where both teams will be desperate to pick up points and will view this as an opportunity to get more points on the board, I can see this being a bit of a scrap. I also think Luton can get 8 or more shots away here. They've managed to beat that number in each of their games so far. There's no reason why they can't do it again against the porous Fulham defence. And there's already the match goals, match corners and cards angles that we've touched upon there. Just the single for me. This is another one where I couldn't really put together a same game parlay that I had any real confidence in, so I'm just going to stick with this single. Both teams to score yes at -125, advising 1 unit on this play. The Premier League in general is seeing a lot more goals this season, partly due to the new directives that's seeing more injury time at the end of the game. So seeing that we can get -125 on both teams to score makes sense to me. Old Trafford next, must-win game for Man United, surely, welcoming the Seagulls to Manchester. And Man United, as we can see, 2 away games, both lost, 2 home games, both won. And those wins came against Wolves and Forest, who are both going to be in the relegation fight, and neither one of them were convincing. It's not been a great start from Man United and Erik ten Hag. And as you can see here, 3 out of the 4 games, over 2 expected goals. They really struggled to convert chances against Wolves. They struggled against Spurs to do the same. They gifted goals to Forest, and then against Arsenal last time out, while they looked pretty dangerous on the counter, Arsenal did dominate most of the attacking metrics. The XG against makes for particularly poor reading for Man United. This is last season's home matches against their fellow top 11, so that's 10 games. And as you can see, they only dropped points on 2 occasions, with their only loss being against Brighton. So it is an interesting one. They also only failed to score in 1 of those 10 games last season. So I do expect United to get on the score sheet here, but the way they're playing, I don't expect them to keep a clean sheet either. Shot status, fairly consistent. Pretty poor against Arsenal last time out. One of the worst performances, but they did have to employ a counter-attacking approach in that game. I can't see them doing that here in front of their own fans. At least 1 offside in every game so far. Corner numbers have been high. 15, 11, 14 and 15. Throw-in numbers have always been sort of mid to high teens. Multiple bookings in every game so far. Brighton, as you can see, 3 wins out of 4, 9 points from a possible 12 to start the season. Excellent again from Roberto De Zerbi. And as you can see from the XG, there's not really a lot you can argue against. The Wolves game, a 4-1 victory. If you look at the XG there, Wolves will feel a little hard done by. I don't think Wolves deserved really anything out of the game, even if these numbers suggest that they might have. But it certainly wasn't a 4-1 game. They struggled against West Ham, but West Ham had 22% of the ball and hit them on the counter, and that is when Brighton have actually struggled against teams, is when they've got the lion's share of the ball. Man United are not going to employ that kind of tactic at Old Trafford, so I don't think we're going to see that. High shots numbers, as you would expect. Shots on target has really improved this season. Their efficiency in front of goal has definitely gone on an upward curve. Foul numbers, 10 or more in every game. Multiple offsides in 3 out of the 4 games. Offside at least once in all 4. Corner numbers, pretty high. 13, 8, 21 and 8. Throw-in numbers, fairly steady, mid-teens roughly. Booked in every game so far, multiple bookings in 3 out of the 4, and 3.25 average yellow cards per game. That's on the higher end of the disciplinary scale in the Premier League thus far. So here's some notes. I do think there's going to be goals in this one, at least 2. I'd be surprised if both teams don't get on the score sheet, like mentioned. I think Man United will get plenty of opportunities to shoot. I think there will be a number of match corners as well, and given the disciplinary records of both of these teams coming into this, I do think that both teams will pick up bookings here. For Brighton, I do think they're going to continue with the high shot numbers, and I do think they'll get a good number of them on target, and there's already the aforementioned goals, corners and cards markets there. So that has led me to this selection at plus 120. It's a double chance for Brighton to win, and I do think both teams score. Going back to the start of last season, Man United have scored 19 of their last 21 games at Old Trafford, and Brighton have scored in 19 of 20 away games. Under Roberto De Zerbi, Brighton games have seen 24 of 36 Brighton games have seen both teams score. 26 of 36 have seen over 2.5, and they've kept just 9 clean sheets in that time. Also worth noting that Man United are still in the early stages of utilising this new goalkeeper Onana in terms of his feet. They're coming up against the Brighton side, who like to press, and they have the highest number of turnovers in the Premier League after 4 rounds. United also continue to be without the likes of Luke Shaw, Raphael Varane and Mason Mount through injury. I think this game's going to come too early for the new signing, Sofiane Amrabat, and Antony will be unavailable for the foreseeable future with ongoing legal issues. I also came up with this same game parlay using some of the legs from before. 6 legs this one. I think it's got a good chance, and I do think this is the pick of the 10 AM games, and it will be the one that I am watching personally. There's a good feeling around the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium right now as they welcome Sheffield United to town. Life under Ange Postecoglou has started very, very well. Unbeaten in their first 4 games. 3 wins and a draw. 10 points from a possible 12. They've scored multiple goals in all 4 games, and they've kept a couple of clean sheets in there as well. If you look at the XG, they've been pretty consistent. Well over 1 in all games, over 2 in a couple of them. Giving up their fair share as well. They'll definitely allow you opportunities, just the way that they play. But it's been an impressive start, you really have to say. Shot state has been pretty steady since that first game against Brentford, where they only got 10. They've hit 17, 17 and 21 against this. A couple of decent opponents in Man United and Bournemouth. Shots on target has been very impressive. The efficiency in front of goal, despite the departure of Harry Kane, they've looked really good. I know Richarlison's not exactly a 20-goal-a-season striker, but I think some of his movement and creating spaces up top for other players to come into the game, I think he can be quite effective up there. Corners numbers are pretty steady, 9, 11, 8 and 11. Multiple bookings in every game so far. That's 3.25 average per game. That's on the higher end of the disciplinary scale, so I think that will continue, especially with some of the personnel that's involved. Sheffield United, finding it difficult, promoted team here. 1 point from their opening 4 games, and that came against Everton, who are expected to be in and around that relegation dogfight with them. And when you look at the statistics here, they have lost the XG battle in all 4 games. The one that makes for the worst reading, in my opinion, is the last game against Everton. If you are conceding 2.59 expected goals against Everton, that is a major red flag. As you can see, they've conceded multiple goals in their last 3, and against Man City, they were lucky to get out of there having only conceded 2. Shots numbers, pretty low other than that last one against Everton. Foul numbers, pretty high as expected. They've had offsides at least once in every game, a couple in 2 of them. Corner numbers have been fairly high, 10, 13, 13 and 10. Multiple yellow cards in 3 out of the 4, averaging out at 2.75 per game. I think Tottenham win this. I can't see there just being 1 goal in the match. I think Spurs are going to have plenty of opportunities in front of goal, and Sheffield United are allowing a lot of touches in their box, so I do think there'll be a good amount on target. I see both teams getting carded at least twice here. It's just the way Spurs are playing, and it's just the way that Sheffield United have to play. I do think Sheffield United can get over 5.5 shots here. They've managed to hit that number in all of their games so far, even against Man City. There's no reason why they can't hit it against Tottenham Hotspur. So I came up with this. I do think Spurs win it. I do think there'll be over 2.5 goals in the game. The reason I didn't combine a win for Spurs as well as over 2.5 Spurs goals is there just wasn't that much difference in the price. So I'm just going to stick with over 2.5 team goals for Spurs at -110, advising 1 unit. Has to be noted that Spurs' scoring stadium at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is very good. Since the beginning of last season, they've scored in 18 out of 20 in front of their own fans, drawing blanks only against Villa and Arsenal. I've also put together this 6-leg parlay plus 300, advising half a unit. I think it's got a great shout. London Stadium next. West Ham welcome Man City to town. 2 unbeaten sides here. David Moyes' men starting the season really, really well, with 3 wins and a draw from the first 4 games, 10 points from a possible 12. They've scored in every game. They've conceded in every game. Entertaining. Not a word we always associate with David Moyes, but it's been entertaining so far. I think had Moyes not taken such a pragmatic approach against Bournemouth in the opening game, they probably could have had 12 points from 12 here, but never mind. They'll not be complaining with this tally so far. Lucky to get out of there with all 3 points against Chelsea, but they'll take it. Brilliant performance, very, very Moyes performance against Brighton. 22% of the ball, 3.23 expected goals generated regardless, and they run out 3-1 winners. 2-1 winners at Luton just before the international break. A little bit of a red flag there, given that Luton generated 1.47 expected goals. You'd expect the Hammers to be a little better than that. As we can see, fairly steady on the shot numbers. Shots on target have been decent. Offsides at least once in every game so far. In fact, multiple offsides in every game so far, averaging at 3.25 per game. Corner numbers have been high. 14, 12, 21 and 15. You would expect West Ham will be looking in this game to try and get goals from set pieces, given the threat that James Ward-Prowse poses. Yellow cards in every game so far. Multiple yellow cards in 3 out of the 4. Manchester City, 4 wins from 4, top of the Premier League, business as usual. They've won the XG battle in all 4 games so far, and convincingly so. Despite the 5-1 win against Fulham last time out, that doesn't tell the whole story. Big decision going against Fulham there. The XG suggesting that maybe Man City should have been closer to 2 or 3 goals versus the 5 that they scored. But impressive nevertheless, getting the job done. The shots data, high. Even though the raw shots, the last game against Fulham, you see that 17, 14, 37 in the shots column there. The shots column drops off significantly, but look at the shots on target. That's maintained. That efficiency in front of goal is just something that we've seen Pep Guardiola's men do better and better over the years. Offsides, at least one in every game so far. Corner numbers kind of all over the place. Throw-in numbers, not really much consistency there either, and only 3 yellow cards over the opening 4 games. It means that they have one of the best disciplinary records in the division. I can see there being more than 1 goal in this game. It wouldn't surprise me if West Ham contribute, but I do see goals in this one. I can't see West Ham getting a number of shots away to only manage 9 against Luton last time out, coming up against the Man City side who have not allowed more than 7 in their first 4 games. It's hard to see it, and I think West Ham pick up themselves a couple of cards here. Man City, I can see them getting plenty of shots away. I think they're going to get a number of free kicks. West Ham are going to have to find a way to break up their play and slow them down, and I do think Man City should get plenty of corners in this one, given that they're going to have at least 75% of the ball. It leads me to this selection. Man City to win and under 5 match goals. This pays out at -120, and I'm advising a unit on this one. West Ham showed what they're capable of against Brighton. 22% possession, 3.23 expected goals, and a 3-1 win. They come up against the Man City side, who are dominating the majority of the attacking and defensive statistics. Man City's squad is much stronger than Brighton's pound for pound, obviously, and has also seen less player turnover, so they're also more settled. I think West Ham can make it difficult. I think they can keep it tight, but I have to believe that City is just going to be too strong on the day. So I expect them to win in a low-scoring affair. No same-game parlay for that one. And that leads us to the final game on Saturday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff. St James's Park sees Newcastle welcome Brentford. And it's been a poor start for Newcastle. Opening day victory against Aston Villa had the Geordies high, but since then it's been 3 losses on the spin, albeit to very good opponents in Man City, Liverpool and Brighton. The Liverpool one in particular really stinging, having been 1-0 up against 10 men for the majority of that match. The XG, it doesn't make for bad reading. I would say the most disappointing one from my aspect would be I thought they had an opportunity to go and get something at the Etihad against Man City on match day 2. They were up against a team that had a few injuries and had to rotate based on their Super Cup commitments, and they managed to generate 0.29 XG. Outside of that, we all know what happened at Liverpool. And if you look at the Brighton game, it was much closer than the 3-1 suggests. They will need to bounce back here, and they've got a good chance of doing so at St James's Park. And if you look at the numbers here, you can see against Aston Villa, against Liverpool, the shot numbers and everything are so much higher than away from home. They are better at St James's. They're going to have to get better on the road if they want to continue competing for top 4 honours. What can you say? St James's Park, they're just a different prospect. A number of fouls being committed by Newcastle players, 11 or more in all 4 games so far. Corner numbers, if you take out the game against Man City, which was a bit of a dead rubber, you've got 11, 14 and 8 there. Throw-in numbers, pretty low, 15 or less. Yellow carded in every single game, and outside the Liverpool game, they saw 4 or more yellow cards. Averaging 3.5 yellow cards per game, that is right at the top end of the disciplinary spectrum. Brentford, unbeaten in 4 games, probably disappointed not to have picked up more points in that time. Some games they've drawn that they probably should have been winning. The Spurs game, fair enough draw. They brushed aside Fulham at the Cottage, and then Crystal Palace and Bournemouth, 2 home games they would have been expecting to win. I certainly expected them to win, so they'll be disappointed with that, and they'll be hoping to get back to winning ways here. Their away record isn't great though. It's interesting, look at the XG there. They've won the XG battle in all 4 games, and they are actually topping the division in terms of XG generated, right above Brighton and Man City, who usually dominate that metric. Defensively, they've looked pretty solid. Against Bournemouth, question marks have to be raised. But outside of that, didn't really give much away against Fulham or Crystal Palace. Shots pretty high. You'd expect that given they're over 10 XG generated, but the shots data is high, the shots on target is high, other than that Crystal Palace game where they kind of inexplicably only got 1 on target out of 12. Let's try that again. Offside at least once in all 4 games so far. Corner numbers 9, 10, 14 and 7. Throw-in numbers 13 or more in all of them. And then yellow cards, just the 4 in 4 games. One of the better disciplinary records so far. Given Newcastle's home record, I'm going to go with a double chance here. I think there's going to be more than a match goal. I just don't see Newcastle keeping a clean sheet here. I'll touch on their record in a few minutes. I think Newcastle have plenty of shots on goal. I do think there'll be a lot of corners in this game because both teams are having high shot outputs, and that usually does mean that there's a few more corners to be had. I think both teams get a card, and I can see Newcastle continuing the trend of getting multiple in this game. Brentford over 6.5 shots. I think that's such a low number to get at a decent price to add to a leg of a parlay, so I'm definitely taking it. I think Newcastle will continue to foul, so I'm going to go with Brentford over 10.5 free kicks here. Brentford had an offside in every game so far, multiple in a couple of them as well, so I'm going to stick with that. And we've got the aforementioned match goals, match corners and cards markets there, which leads us to this. I've got a single here of both teams to score and over 2.5 goals, priced at plus 110, advising 1 unit on that. I think if you look at it, Newcastle, they were kind of considered this really rock-solid defensive team at the beginning of last season, and that was true up until a certain point. Now, if you look back, they can only boast 2 clean sheets in their last 22 Premier League games, which is quite remarkable. Scoring record at St James's Park, however, has been very good. They've scored in 16 of their last 21 in front of the home support at an average of 2 goals per game. If you look at Brentford, away from home against their fellow top half finishers last season, they picked up just 8 points from a possible 27. 6 of their games saw both teams score. 6 also saw 2.5 goals, and they didn't keep a single clean sheet in that sample. I see goals in this game. I've also put together this same game parlay paying out at plus 300. I'm going to have half a unit on this. This is the biggest same game parlay I've got here with 9 legs, but I do think it's got a good chance of coming in. It'll be a good watch at 12:30. I'm expecting an entertaining game, and this will be a fun one to cheer along while we watch the drama unfold. And that is all for this Saturday edition of the Soccer Punter podcast. If you're enjoying this content, please hit like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back tomorrow with some picks and predictions for the remaining 3 games over Sunday and Monday. So until then, take care and best of luck with all your bets this weekend. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.